Here in Lesson 21, we've got two more chords that we're going to add to your chord vocabulary. And I call these Dreamy and Dramatic. And so we're going to start by switching to the overhead camera, and I will show you how to take a major chord, for example, and turn it into a dreamy chord. And then I'll show you how to start on any note and construct the dramatic chord. Now, these chords actually have specific musical names. The dreamy chord is actually known as the augmented chord, and I'll explain more about that when we show you how it's constructed. And the dramatic chord, which you'll probably recognize when you hear it, that's called the diminished chord. So these are very interesting chords in the way they're put together. So let's switch to the overhead keyboard, and I'll show you how to create dreamy and dramatic. Okay, let's start with dreamy, which we can also call augmented. And creating this particular chord is quite simple. You can start with any major chord in root position. So remember, the root is the lowest sounding note. That's root position. So we have C major, and we're going to take the top note, which is G, and we're going to raise it half a step. And so we get C major becoming C augmented. And you can just play it up and down. And you'll notice, listen carefully to this chord when you play it. It's neither major nor minor. And it has this kind of dreamy quality to it. And these chords are usually indicated with the letters A, U, G. So you might see something like C, aug, A-U-G. And this can be built on any major chord. So for example, let's take D major. Take the top note, we're playing D major in root position, take the top note, raise it half a step. And that's D augmented. Now here's an interesting thing about augmented chords. Let's, for example, start here. That's C augmented. Then if we start here on D flat, there's D augmented. Excuse me, D flat augmented, I should say. And then we've already played this one. D augmented. There's E flat augmented, but now look what happens when we start on E. Does this sound familiar? It's the same three notes. And if we go up one more from E augmented, it sounds like D flat augmented, doesn't it? So you'll find out as you deal with augmented chords that there are only 1, 2, 3, 4 different kinds. And then it starts to repeat. But you can see this chord has a very unsettling sound. You might hear it used in a song like this. Might sound something like that. Anyway, that's something for you to listen for as you're listening to a song. Now, let's look at the diminished chord. This type of chord was a favorite of Beethoven. And when you learn this chord, I want you to check out the first movement of the Moonlight Sonata. You can go to YouTube and put in, well, you're already on YouTube. Just go to Beethoven Moonlight Sonata and listen to the first movement, and you'll hear it. In fact, maybe I'll put a little snippet of that here at the end of this video. But here is one way to find any diminished chord. So you can start on any note. For example, we're going to start on C, and we will create a C diminished chord. So starting from C, you count up 3 half steps. 1, 2, 3. And now we add that D sharp to the C. Now, starting from D sharp, we repeat the process. We count up 1, 2, 3. You will arrive on F sharp, so we add that note to C and D sharp. And then starting from F sharp, count up 3 more half steps. 1, 2, 3. You will arrive on A, add this to the 3 notes you already have. You have a 4-note chord with a rather dramatic sound, and that's the diminished chord. Now take note, if you try to add a 5th note by counting up from A, 1, 2, 3, look at that, you wind up back on C. And one other note, no pun intended, of interest concerning diminished chords, there are only 3 different basic diminished chords. So if you build a diminished chord on C, C sharp, or D, you get 3 different sets of 4 notes. But if you start on D sharp or E flat, you end up with the same 4 notes as the C diminished. So it's a very dramatic sounding chord, isn't it? Sometimes if you're looking at an old silent movie, you might hear something like something like that. Anyway, there you go. That's dreamy and dramatic, or augmented, or diminished. So those are some chords you can have fun with.